Hey everyone, this is a FloTrack podcast. FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com is the email address. I'm Kevin Selly, joined by Gordon Mack. We're going to talk Duane Solomon's retirement, the OTC ATC duel. But let's open things up, Gordon, with the race that everybody's talking about, the one that you teased last week, the time trial featuring JoJo.
Yeah, that was the race of the weekend. Enough of this two pros dueling it out on both coasts. No, it was all about what JoJo did on the local track here in Austin, Texas. So it started off. We were our time was clock p.m. However, what we didn't realize, we didn't know this was near this location, but there was a giant Juneteenth block party going on near the track. So when we drove there, the entire road was blocked off. So we started freaking out because we were like, oh, we might not hit our start time. But luckily we did. JoJo hopped out of the car, did her warm up, and I was able to eventually drive to the start line. We had two pacers, one being former Division I athlete, Texas Division I athlete Mark Pinales, was actually pretty good in college. I think he was like a sub 14 guy in the 5K.
Okay.
So he was a rabbit along with another guy, Jason Cassidy, two local runners. The goal was sub
Couldn't
5.
get Leo. Couldn't get
Could
Leo
not get
Manzano.
Leo. Leo is sipping on margaritas on the beaches, just enjoying his retirement. The goal was sub 5. First lap was they went out in 70, I guess 72, 73. They're like 73. So a little quick in the first lap. Then they were 229. I know.
Fire the rabbits at that point. Come on, what are we doing here? 72?
I think it was probably 73. 73.
Okay.
I'll give him 73. And then it was 229. And then we hit a wall there on that third lap. JoJo hit a wall. But she rallied back in the fourth lap and ended up running 5:13. Now, when you want to run sub 5, you went 13 seconds off. I think it was still very good because it was the first like good effort. And hey, 5:13 at age 30. Hey, you should take that. And I think she's going to run sub 5 in the second or third attempt because she just hasn't done enough mile work for this type of race.
Did the rabbits stay on the whole time?
Yeah, they stayed on the whole time. Yeah.
Okay, good. Did anybody chide them afterwards for the 72 that you're now whitewashing and saying it was a 73? But we know with history that it was a 72 because that's the first number that you said. We take even if we didn't have speed, quote unquote, when we were in high school and college, we take it for granted when we get older. You always think you're going to be able to crank out certain splits. And then I don't know what age it happens, but it happens to everybody. And then all of a sudden, what used to be very, very easy becomes extremely hard. And so I can relate. I mean, 5:13 is still cruising for sure, but it just it takes so long to get used to that pace again. You don't default into just like cruising around running like 73s again. It takes a while.
Yeah, and her mile PR is 5:08, so she was 5 seconds off of that, and that's a PR from
wow, that's amazing.
From like freshman year of college, right, or freshman
year,
senior year of high school, whatever. I think what we're gonna do next is that we're gonna start doing workouts. What we've been doing is doing workouts at slower pace, but then doing mile pace 200s at the end of workouts. But now we need to start doing mile pace 400s, mile pace 600s to kind of go a little bit farther with that hard effort to kind of, because I think it was after she hit 800, it was the first time she had kept that pace going. And then it was like, whoa, I never felt this, So we're excited for the next run. I don't know.
I love the we.
We
100% team.
I'm the equipment manager. I'm the equipment manager. I'm not the coach, just the equipment manager.
I hope you become an agent. That way you can just appreciate everything that goes into that job. I hope one day that's where you end up.
This is what we learned from the race, is that GPS miles are all bullshit. Because her GPS mile said she ran 4:58. And I'm sorry, but like
take it.
Well, that's 15 seconds. 15 seconds off a mile. So everyone out there who is bragging about their 5K GPS time, it's not real. It's just not real. these 10K GPS times, they're not real. They're all fake times. You know?
Did the rabbits who did a horrible job? Did they hit their watches?
Yeah, no. Everyone, all of them were wearing GPS watches, and they all said they ran sub 5 mile. But I
Oh
was there
wow.
standing with an actual phone clock,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
cell phone clock, and we measured
The
it
old
out,
phone clock.
the old phone clock, and they ran 5:13. So this GPS system, which makes sense, doesn't know how to correctly know where you are for a mile. So
Hmm.
we just need a all GPS, because the thing is, like, these virtual miles, right, or virtual
Yeah, yeah.
5Ks during this pandemic, everyone's posting all these times. It's all like performance enhanced. It's all these GPS enhanced times.
Or maybe what happened, this race got tactical. She just ran way more than a mile. She was on the outside. She was moving around. So she actually covered 1 mile worth of distance in under 5 minutes. But because there was so much jostling the pack, that she finished the race in 5:13. Did
Yeah,
that happen?
this 3-person race. I doubt there was much jostling going on. But yeah, I think we need to
Was she
figure
on the
out
rail?
how to. She was on the rail. She was on the rail. There was
Okay.
no rail, so probably it's not going to get IAAF certified. And
Okay.
also,
I think
mixed gender
I
pacers is probably going to ruin the certification as well. But
I take all GPS time seriously, so congratulate her on sub 5. It counts. If it counts for the 5K, 10K marathon people, it counts for
well,
this.
here's the moral dilemma, right? She
Hmm.
using this time to like a virtual mile like race, like
Yeah.
submit it to like. So like, what do you submit? Do you submit the time isn't real, but your computer GPS says that's the time? Or do you manually submit the real time? Like, it's a moral dilemma because other competitors are just using their GPS time. So that
Mm-hmm.
you're going against a bunch of fake times. Do you like have a moral, and go with the real time? It's like Lance Armstrong, right? Everyone
No,
else
it's
is
not at all like
doping.
Lance
You
Armstrong.
could dope and then win, or you could not dope and get 35th. It's a moral dilemma.
Well, does she want to win, or does she want to input the time that she covered 4 laps in? What's the goal here? It's not her fault the GPS watch is apparently not accurate,
But
or
like,
that
if
she ran a
if there's
tactical time trial. It's not her
if
fault.
there's 20 if there's 50 people submitting times and 49 of those times are all 15 seconds too fast, and you're the one person who decided to put it as the actual time, it doesn't feel fair,
Is there a
right?
chance you mismeasured? I know you said you had to measure the additional 9 meters. Is there a chance you
No,
mismeasured? Because the track
you
could
don't
be
miss
off by a meter or two, too. That's a
you don't
possibility,
mismeasure
right?
15 seconds. You don't mismeasure 15 seconds of a mile. That's
Well, no,
like
but that in combination with the track being slightly longer, you could get there.
that's
Yeah,
not
it's
a
almost
slightly
that's like
longer. You say it's like a
it's 80 meters.
402-meter track?
Well, no, I'm saying if you measured it incorrectly, plus the track was a little long, but I guess you'd
I
have
did
to
not
get
measure.
80 meters or so long. 15
Yeah.
seconds is quite a bit.
Yeah.
If she's
So,
going through, well, if she's running 5 minute pace, what's that? About 18 seconds per 100. So yeah, right in about 75, 80 meters
yeah.
long.
So,
The watch, yeah, the watch failed. Do you want to name the brand of watch right now so people know not to ever trust it again, or do you want to wait on
no,
that?
it's a famous brand, so they might become a sponsor down the road, so we don't want to kind of
Did
throw them under the water.
question? Don't throw them under the water. Uh, did everybody have the same brand? Did the two rabbits also have the same brand?
Yes. It's a
Okay,
very popular
because I was
brand.
going to say if they had different types, maybe it's an issue with the satellites, and that's who we got to take this up with. But if you're
It
saying
is. I mean, it doesn't matter what brand it was. It could be a Elon Musk GPS watch. It's all going to be
mhm,
wrong because GPS is sending a signal every millisecond all the way up into the stars and back down and seeing the distance you traveled. And
yeah,
when you're running in a circle, it's not going to recognize that there's a plus minus error,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and yeah. So
right.
we
Okay,
just
so
need
you're
to,
saying
we need to like people, we just need to make sure that this era of pandemic virtual races, it has an asterisk because GPS 5Ks and GPS 10Ks and GPS miles are not real. They're just not.
Yeah.
I did a
Yeah.
science experiment.
Well, on that note, I thought the OTC ATC duel did a pretty good job syncing up the start for their races, so you could actually tell who crossed the line first. There were a couple exceptions there where there might have been a bit of a delay, and it helped that several of the races weren't close at all, so you could clearly tell who won and who didn't win. But in terms of technology, I thought they navigated that part pretty well. There was some difficulty. Was it the relay at the end when Hayward for OTC took off? Like it looked like he started before the race started, but you don't know when the guy in Oregon yelled go, right? He could have yelled go and hit the watch, and there could have been a second or a second and a half delay before the Atlanta guy yelled it. But in terms of navigating all that stuff, now here's the thing though, they weren't worried about GPS readings, Gordon. That was all just person v person. So maybe that's the secret here. You just eliminate the measurement entirely and just line people up and race.
Well, here's the thing. I did not watch it. I watched a little bit of the replay. There was no clock, right?
No, so what they did, you didn't watch it. Well, thank you for being prepared for the show. So what they did was after each race, they held up their stopwatch to
Yeah, but
the
like
camera so you could see. And none of them were really that close. So it never was like, oh, that's a controversial time. It was the Chanel Price won by 6 or 7 seconds, I think. So it wasn't, the timing never factored in. I'll say that.
yeah. But also the camera angle was just on them, so you couldn't really tell where they were on the track.
True. And that is one of my critiques. I think they could have gone a little wider so you knew. Because what happened in the men's 1200, I know you already saw this, so I apologize for repeating, but I'll just do it for the people who didn't maybe watch. Abraham Alvarado versus Vincent Sietti, the race we've been wanting to see. Tim Hutchings, who was doing commentary. By the way, Tim Hutchings, when OTC had 2 points and Atlanta Track Club had 0, and Tim Hutchings got to say 2-0, he was probably so pumped as a British guy who's been calling track, but maybe deep down has always wanted to do soccer, and he got to say 2-0. I thought that was interesting. Anyway, he's saying basically Alvarado's ahead, Alvarado's ahead, Alvarado's ahead, right? Then it gets down to the last 100, and I don't know what he's basing this on because we're looking at the same camera angle, right? Can you tell who's ahead? You can sometimes look at the markings on the track, but again, with the delay, you don't know, and when they go past pretty quick, it's hard to tell. So then it's the last 50 meters, and he's basically calling the thing for Alvarado, and then Sietti crosses the line, clearly ahead of Alvarado, and the margin was not, it wasn't a tenth of a second. It was several seconds difference, and it was like, whoops. So I think in that case, if they had a wider view, we could have had a better perspective on who was actually winning, because he was just essentially assuming Alvarado was ahead when he was not.
Do you think there's a chance they did it fake live? It was pre-recorded and then they pretended they were live on the track, like they actually did that track meet on a Friday afternoon or Friday evening.
And then wait, they each did it separate and then just tried to sync it up.
They recorded it and then they put it in an edit player, and then Tim Hutchins called it on top of it and then upload.
I mean, no. I mean, I feel like that would have been more complicated because then you got to export, right? You got to drop it into Final Cut. You got to do several timelines. You got to mess with the audio. Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big file size though too. It's an hour long. I don't know. They had interviews and stuff, and were kicking it back and forth to people. They had pre-race and post-race interviews. It looked live. Now the Impossible Games thing with Kenya, that definitely, in retrospect, or the Villainy, that definitely looked tape delayed. When you go in with the knowledge that it was tape delayed, right? Because you're like, and all of a sudden, here's the Villainy play, and then he goes and vaults, or here's the Kenyans play. This looked a lot more. This looked a lot rougher.
Live.
So it made me think. Yeah, it made me think that it was live. But Yeah, Nigel Amos. I don't know if you saw him. He went out in, gosh, how fast did he go up? 46, 47 or something for the 400. He went, nobody, he thought it was a diamond league. Nobody told Nigel Amos that this was just a dual meet at home. He like came to play, and then he completely fell apart the final 200. Not unlike some of his diamond league races, and almost lost his race. That was the closest one of all of them, and it involved the guy with or the athlete with the most credentials, but he was able to hold off. Was that Capwell or Avery Bartlett? I don't remember. One of them ran the relay, and one of them ran the 600. Did you see OTC's jerseys though? That was the big takeaway for me.
Yes,
I liked them.
they were like they kind of look like Bowerman last year, but green.
Yes, but more swirly and less plasma. I liked them. I thought
More
they were good
swirly,
jerseys.
less plasma.
Yeah. That's I'm good with words, Gordon. So I really think people can understand what I'm saying. People should look at the YouTube video and see. I thought they were pretty sharp. Biggest letdown in the meet though, women's 1200, because there's a scratch. You can't have a scratch in a virtual meet. You got to get somebody out there. It's hard
Did they
enough
have
running.
alternates?
They said they had alternates, but they lined them up, and Hannah Green was just standing there in her sweats, and poor Yolanda Garambe had to race by herself. That was the only win for Atlanta Track Club, though. So she runs it. She ran 3:20. She went hard. Look, I was seriously watching this meet, but I just thought it was a bummer that OTC didn't have an alternate on deck. I guess that's the argument for wanting three athletes. Chanel Price looked pretty good. She was moving really well, and then the relay. I like the 2x2x4. I think that's a fun relay. Again, hard to tell who's in front and who's behind, but the strategy there of how hard to go out is interesting to me. I like that they did it. I like that a lot more than the mixed gender 4x4 that they had at Worlds. I know you're a big mixed gender 4x4 fan though, so I'm expecting you to push back on that.
For those listening, I'm shaking my head. I'm not a big fan
SMH.
at all.
Do you like the 2x2x4 as like not as a world championship event, but as a relay meet, world relays type of thing?
I do, but I would like it better if they just made it a 2x2x4 men's race and a 2x2x4 women's race. Not this man and women thing. Like I would rather see like Donovan Brazier and Clayton Murphy as a team go up against, you know, Nigel Amos and Emmanuel Courier. Like that'd be cool. Something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just picked two random runners, but like that would be more because then I don't know. That'll be. It's like basically it's like turning a way to turn a workout into a race. That's what's interesting.
Yeah, that's why I like it. Yeah.
It's like turning a workout into a race.
What if you had to in your 2x2x4 team, you had to do one person whose results from the previous year came predominantly from the 800, and the other person on your team had to have results that predominantly came from the 400?
Well, that 400-meter person is not gonna it's not gonna want to participate.
Well, that's why it makes it
imagine
fun.
Fred Curley doing this. He'll be like, "Come on, you not."
That's what makes it fun. Maybe 400 hurdles. Maybe throw a hurdler in there.
A little more strength.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not 1500-meter runner. I don't need to see in there.
Yeah, that's true.
I thought it'd be just a fun experiment just to see how fast a 400-meter runner could do it.
Yeah, I mean, it would also be funny to watch. It's going to be hard to watch them try to run slow because they're not going to know how to run like a 49. You know.
Yeah. When's the last time Michael Norman's run a 49? Like he just doesn't even know what that feels like. His body physically will not be able to go that slow, and it would be funny to watch him run it. That's why I think I like the that. But I like the idea of making a men's squad and a women's squad. It also balances out the rest because as it stands right now, the women get much less rest than the men do because of the discrepancy in how fast they run the legs. But when World Relays comes back, I hope they keep the 2x2x4. And in the next edition of the OTC ATC Duel, I hope they keep the 2x2x4. I think that's a must.
The next edition, what's the
Oh yeah,
over-under of there being a next edition? 0.5. That's the over-under. Are you taking the over or the under of there being another one? Taking the under.
I would go under. I think we might see another dual meet though between clubs. I don't know if it would be these two clubs. I'm with. Was it you or Lincoln last week who said match race you want to see like Bowerman versus Pete Julian's group? Like, that's what we want to see.
Yeah,
that would be cool.
Yeah. Well, this also was like kind of camouflage into a like it was like a all for charity type thing. Like it wasn't like an actual like competition per se, right? No one was caring about winning or losing. It wasn't like money on the line or anything like that.
Nigel Amos cared. Nigel Amos, it might still be on the track there. He went hard. I think it would be awesome to see Bowerman and Julian's group, or just two groups where there's
or Bowerman and ADP.
Yes, it would be awesome just to see an even matchup because a lot of these were one-sided, and then they could take what they learned with the first one. You're right, go a little bit wider. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe this is the time you bust out the drone. I know they did at BYU. Did you see this? You're big into following NCAA.
Live streaming from drones is not that feasible as people think. Just putting that out there.
Well, so
drones can only last for like 45 minutes, let alone if they're live streaming, it's even shorter. So
yeah, but one race.
Everyone thinks it's there.
One race. But Clayton Young. Well, Clayton Young streamed it on his Instagram page, but there was a time trial between Connor Mance and Casey Klinger last week. They ran a mile against each other, and Jared Ward was commentating, and they were trying to sync up that commentary with the drone footage, which they couldn't put it on the same account, so they had it on two separate accounts. But Ward just had his phone basically, and was commentating, filming it as per usual. But yeah, I don't know. I think you guys made fun of the electric cars. I got to see one of those cars. It was really small. It was kind of cool. But maybe they relied on the car too much because they were just like so close. They're like really tight in there, and you want to know where they're at on each lap, right? Yeah. All right. So big winners for me though. Yeah, big winner. Nigel Amos gets that work in. He's icing a lot today. OTC jerseys.
And big loser was GPS companies and their accuracy.
Yes, exactly. Duane Solomon officially retired. I want to talk about this a little bit. Were you paying attention to track when Duane Solomon was at his peak? I know you didn't start working for FloTrack until 14, which was a good year for Duane Solomon, but no championship there. Okay, well then tell me, what are your memories of watching Duane Solomon compete?
I mean, the biggest memory, I have two main memories. One was he was in the 800 the most famous 800 with David Rudisha, where he gets fourth and runs 142. And then the other memory I have is, I mean, it's just a famous quote when he says, "I went to the Twilight Zone." Was that what the line is? I went to the Twilight Zone, where he goes out in 49 seconds and then just dies and, finishes last. So it was like, I know that's not like a memorable like win or like great achievement moment, but it was very like I remember that race more than I remember any of his other races. I remember that more than any of his wins. But you kind of laid out his arc from 2007 all the way to 2020, and he had a very good like bell curve type performance, right? He had like his college years where he was doing well in the NCAA, making a couple teams. Then he had his peak years where it was probably, you could argue, was maybe 12, 13, 14 was like his peak.
Right.
And then 15 down, he kind of came down to the other side of kind of dealing with injuries. And and missing finals and stuff like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
my most memorable moment is him in the Olympic final getting fourth. And also my most memorable quote is him talking about going to the Twilight Zone when he went out
Mhm.
too fast and just like blacked out.
In 2015, and he was still in position to qualify inside the last 100 meters and then got past and then stopped, eventually crossed the finish line. We link his career a lot to Nick Symmonds, and it is interesting because 15, that was the last final for both of them. And their first team they made together, outdoor team, in 2007. Solomon was still in college. Symmonds was coming off a big win at the Prefontaine Classic, and they went 2-3 at USA's, and they both made the team. Now, then Solomon doesn't make the team in 08, 09, or 11. Of course, Symmonds makes all of those teams, and it's tough to compare somebody to Nick Symmonds because you go back and you look at Symmonds' career. He was so consistent. It's ridiculous how consistent Nick Symmonds was year in and year out. Even when he didn't look like he was in full form, he would get it together for USA's and make a team. So then Solomon goes from all the way from 07 to 12, he makes another team. So he had a 4-season, but 3 championship trials year gap there, and then goes 12, 13, where he makes both of those teams. And then 14, he wins USA's, but obviously no global championship that year. So he made 3 teams. And if you asked me before looking, just on memory, without having thought about it, I would think he would have made more than 3 teams. But the teams he made, the performances were especially 12 and 13, so memorable that they almost took a life of their own. Like getting 4th in the 2012 Olympic final, you should have gotten a medal for that. The race was that good. They should have given more medals than just 3. And he runs his PR there.
A little smaller. Yeah.
He runs his PR there, 142.82, which to this day, only Johnny Gray and Donovan Brazier have run faster than. He was only 2/10 off the American record. So that was an incredible race. Obviously, David Rudisha did what he did, and Solomon and Symmonds were 4th and 5th, but they both ran just phenomenal races, which is that type of day where everybody was really good. And then in 13, he gets the win over Symmonds, and that's his only win in a U.S. outdoor championship over Symmonds. And altogether, according to the stats I looked up, they raced 20 times in the 800. Solomon won 4. Symmonds ran 16. But in 2013, he goes 143.27. That's his second fastest time ever, which is quick. And then he wins Monaco before World Champs. And then I don't know if do you remember the 23 or 2013 World Championship 800?
That was the
Do you
one
remember anything about that
where
race?
Symmonds got second? No.
Yeah.
That's fifth.
Yes.
Yeah.
But guess who led from the gun to 705 meters?
I'm guessing it's Duane Solomon.
It is. Good. And they go out in 50 point something, right? So it wasn't one of those gray zone, twilight zone type races. It was under control. Symmonds is actually chomping at the bit. And that was the fun thing between these two throughout their career, was that Solomon had one style, go hard from the gun. Symmonds had another one that was vastly different. He was a closer. But with 100 to go, USA is 1-2 in this thing. USA is 1-2. Symmonds makes a move. Solomon falls back for a while. It looks like Symmonds is going to win the gold. He gets past, and then Solomon drifts back to 6. But there's a scenario there, Gordon, where Solomon medals at the very least and perhaps gets gold there. He was really close in 2013.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the dynamic of what Symmonds did as kind of, he was like the sitting kicker, whereas Solomon was kind of the time trialer, like go from the gun. I like to, looking at the new era of 800, you kind of see a little bit of a similarity between what Clayton Murphy and Donovan Brazier are, where Donovan Brazier is the man who has the 400-meter speed. He can go out in 49 seconds, 50 low, whereas Clayton's kind of sit back and try to rely on a late kick. We're kind of
Or
just
Bryce
seeing a
Hoppel.
new and Bryce Hoppel, I guess no, but Clayton's been around a little bit longer with.
Well, I'm just saying with the closing part of it
True,
is
yeah.
very
Uh,
Hoppelish. Yeah.
but like I kind of look at like they were the first to like kind of pave the era. I feel like Simmons and Solomon were like the they paved the era to what we now have as when we look at the 800, we look at it as an event we could get multiple medals in. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
before Simmons and Duane, it was kind of like, hey, maybe we'll make a final and get eighth place, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like those two were kind of like the torchbearers for what is now a dominant event for men's U.S. 800-meter
Mm-hmm.
running, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I think Duane was the man who like says, hey, he showed that there's no fear in going out in 49 seconds, no fear in going out in 50. And I think, I mean, literally Donovan Brazier is just like a new and improved Duane Solomon, right? He has like the same type of style of going out hard.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally, I mean, and then Donovan breaks his time. Donovan breaks Johnny Gray's time, and
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. We kind of also kind of compared Duane to Johnny Gray in a little
Yeah. Yeah.
bit
Of course.
weird, And I remember interviewing Duane a lot of times. He always was talking about potentially trying to break Johnny Gray's record, and he would run like try to break Johnny Gray's 600-meter record. And there's just
Mm-hmm.
always like that comparison. And that's what happens when you run 142. You're going to get compared to Johnny Gray. But throughout his career, he's always thinking his goal was to break the American record.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it never happened due to injuries late in his career. But he definitely was someone who kind of, like I said, paved the way for these younger talents to come in and not be scared of the Kenyan 800-meter runners and not be scared of fast races, thinking that now 52 seconds, 51 seconds is slow. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you want a normal race, it's 50. If you want a fast race, it's 49, so.
Yeah.
And I think Duane kind of changed the perspective.
Yeah. And Kadavis Robinson at the same time too. He was running hard from the gun there as well. And it's almost like Solomon took that even a step further, like what we saw in 2015. 2014 was an interesting year though, because you brought up the American record chase, and that was the year in April at Mount Sac on a non-championship year. Solomon ran 1:43.88, and everyone thought, whoa, if he's doing that now, what's he going to do late in the summer? That was also the year, I believe, Nick Simmons, do you remember this? Like laid out it was a non-championship year. So he said, here are my goals for 2014. Since there's no global championship, I'm going to lay them out. And he had all of these goals written. And one of them, I believe, was break the American record in the 800. And when Solomon ran that time in April, there was almost consensus in the track and field community that it was going to be a race that year to see who got it. It was either going to be Duane or it was going to be Nick, because Nick was coming off a silver medal. Duane had a faster personal best and had beaten Simmons in 2013 at USA's, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen. And part of that was perhaps they didn't have a global championship that year. Simmons didn't race USA's that year, so Solomon was able to get the win. That was the year. Were you there in Sacramento? The pileup year?
Yeah.
Like everybody fell in the 800. But Solomon was so far ahead, there was a fall in the race, and it didn't impact him at all. That's how you know you're a front runner. The entire race piled up, and it didn't impact Duane Solomon one iota. So I think you can play this game with a lot of careers, and you go back and you say, oh, that non-championship year would have been pivotal if they just had a championship that year. But 14 for the record and also in pursuit of a medal would have been could have been a huge year for Solomon, because then you go to 15 and he was injured and banged up, and then he goes into that final. Remember, he told people before, I'm going to go out at world record pace. And then people thought, hey, is he kidding? Or is he actually going to do this? And yeah, you're right. He went out 49 point. Again, it was leading into the final 100 and then got caught by everybody. We've talked before about that race, though. Do you remember? We talked about the The Nick Simmons butterfly effect from 2015?
Was it 2015 or yes, we did. Yeah.
So and the way that one went was that Simmons didn't end up competing. Remember, he had the dispute with Nike over what he had to wear when he got to the World Championships, right? And then that
Which then
led
allowed for Clayton Murphy to get in.
right. Now, I went back and I watched the post-race interview with Solomon in 2015, and I think Fenton asked him, somebody asked him in the mix zone, "Hey, do you think you would have been better off if you just ran for top 3 and weren't trying to win?" And I wonder if his answer would have been even more different if he knew he just had to be top 4, right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately that's all he had to do. All he had to do was get in the top 4, because he was saying, hey, I'm low on fitness. This was my best way to win. That's just how I run, right? Like, this is how I run. And we hear people say that all the time, right? Like, you can't go into a trials race trying to get third. It just doesn't work that way. You have to just try to win. And if you still end up in the top 3, okay, that's great. But he also was saying, I'm not in great shape now. If I can just qualify and get more training under my belt, I'll be ready to go by the World Championships. And we all know how ridiculously tactical that 2015 championship ended up being. I mean, it ended up being a Rudisha win, so you could say, okay, yeah, no way was anybody going to beat him. But Solomon could have at least medaled in that race, in the same way I'll always make the argument that Simmons could have as well, because all you needed was 4th. If he just holds back a little, go out in 50.5 instead of 49 high.
Yeah. And you talk about the 15 year as the what if year. If you like you said, would have just searched for a top 4 finish. I think about the 2016 year that I think is super underrated as the what if year. I think Duane Solomon would have been a 2016 Olympian. Like,
explain.
And because he got eliminated in the first round, and he got eliminated in the first round because of a brain fart. He literally he had like a 10-meter lead on everyone in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just like pulled up and like kind of like try to jog the final 5 meters. And then just like 3 people just like nipped him at the line. And he was like, wait, what? Yeah. What just happened? I was literally going to just like walk to the semifinals, and he gets nipped. And who was the person that nipped him? Let's see if we can find who that race. Hold on.
Oh, in that first round?
Yeah. I think it was Charles Jacques.
Well, that would be interesting because Charles Jacques ended up getting the final spot. So
yeah.
Was it Charles Jacques? I'm looking it up right now.
I think it was.
Let me go and look at this. Oh, you're right. Wow. I never knew that. 148.71. They both ran 148.71.
They both ran. Jeez. And then it was on a lean, right?
Yeah. No, I remember this. I just didn't remember that it was Jacques who eventually ended up getting to the Olympics. I don't remember that.
Right?
Wow.
It's wild.
Yeah.
So I look at that and I'm like, he wasn't like, he was good. Like, he was ready to roll, and he just had a brain fart, gets out-leaned by like a half a second. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously that whole thing was very weird, and because like you had Donovan Brazier, the young phenom, just having a brain, like not being prepared for the first round. But yeah, I mean, I look at that, and it was kind of weird how that happened too, because I actually interviewed Duane in 2016, like a few months before that, and he was talking about like he's like he's been in USA championships for 10 years at that point, right? 2007 to 2016. Yeah. So I was asking him, like, what's like the strategy for the first few rounds of like how to get through 3 rounds at a USA's. And he was talking about like how he knows how to do it. Like, it's like running on the back. It's like the back of your hand, how to qualify, how to get through rounds. and he literally like did not. He literally what he said in that interview was like, "Yeah, you want to take it easy, but you also want to make sure you're controlled and you can see people around you." And he was like laying it out, and then he literally
Yeah.
just like didn't do what he normally does, and I felt bad for him. I was like, "Oh my goodness, he literally just said to me 2 months ago how to get through the first round in controlled
Mhm.
fashion, and then he just like, had a brain fart, and and then it's crazy. That's probably when he was in his fittest because 17 he got hurt, 18 he's like dealing with injuries, 19 still injuries, not in the same shape. It's been years since he was in his top
Yeah,
shape
that
from
was it.
2014, and then it was done.
Yeah.
But like I would say if he doesn't get that out lean by 0.001 seconds by Charles Jock, he would have made the Olympic team.
Mm.
They literally ran at the same time in the
Yeah.
first round.
Yeah. It was always like you look at his career and it's got these, yes, he won US titles and he made teams, but then there's also '09 out in the first round, 2011 out in the first round, 2016 out in the first round, right? It's just like, and I don't know if some of that's the function of injuries and just not being able to be fully prepared, or a lot of it is weird stuff like that where, oh my gosh, this guy was ready to go. He had run 145 entering the meet. That's not certainly a guarantee that you're going to make an Olympic team, but it shows that he's fit. And just the tactics, I think, were always interesting because it always, a lot of times it felt like feast or famine. He's going to run a phenomenal race, or there's going to be some craziness happening in the last 100 meters, which is why it was always entertaining to watch him race. I think the best, not his best races, because not this isn't this is a blanket statement because 2013 he won from the gun, but a lot of times he ran really well when there was another front runner there, right? 2012 he had Rudisha. '07 when he had made his first team, he had Kadivus Robinson and Jonathan Johnson, guys out there who were running like he was all the time. It helped to have another front runner out there. Obviously, he didn't need that in 2013. 2012 he made the team with KD and Simmons there, two contrasting runners, but it's tough to just go it alone from the front time and time again, and Simmons passes you and then you just wonder, okay, who else is coming? And sometimes it's not anybody. Sometimes it's not everybody, but then sometimes it's everybody. That's a difficult way to run. And he did it for years and years.
If you're Duane Solomon, how do you like kind of? Well, I think it's also kind of interesting. Like we talk about like his best of his career, and we're talking about stuff that happened 7, 8, 9 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, right? That's like his peak is. You know, his last time running at a USA's was 2016, right? Did he run or did he
Yeah.
run in 2017? Yeah. So what is like the mental state of like an athlete like Duane Solomon who coming off of the trials, getting knocked out to have 17, 18, 19 and in a way 20, 4 years of really not having professional type races. Like you're either hurt, you're running one or two local like
Mm-hmm.
domestic type meets, but you're not in the Diamond League. You're not running in the semifinals of a USA Championships. You're kind of just all there doing your own thing. What are those 4 years like for you, right? If you know what you've been, you've been in the
Yeah.
2012 Olympic final and getting fourth, and now you are running twice a year at, local mile races.
Yeah. I think it's a constant struggle to find out why you're doing it and try to recapture what you had. We were talking about Ritz retiring not too long ago on this pod. Similar thing with him. Similar situation with Webb, Jeremy Warner. Like, you could go on, right? But at that point, he was north of 30, north of 30. And I think you have to take solace in the fact that when he was 27, in the prime of his career, ran the fastest race of his life in the greatest 800-meter race of all time on the biggest stage. And it didn't result in a medal or an American record, but I think, wouldn't that give you some sort of comfort to know that you did everything in your career that at one of your peak opportunities, you got this great opportunity and you did the most with it that you could, and it just because sports are the way they are, it didn't result in a medal. But most people don't get that far, even, right?
Yeah, more than most.
Well, most pro athletes, right? Like to run your PR in the biggest race of your career for a track athlete, you have to get some satisfaction from that. Now the cold competitive portion of your body thinks, well, who cares about the time? The goal was to win or to get a medal, and I didn't get it. But when you look back years down the line, you realize how historic that race was. And anybody who knows anything about track knows how big of a deal that race was. So I think you pay way more attention to what you did before 30 than you did after 30, because it's not like he had a short time when he was relevant. We're talking about 07 and you're saying 16. That's a lot of years. That's a lot of years. And I think he even made, I mean, even in 2006, he was running in US championships. Like when he was at USC, he was already a player. Yeah, he made a US final in 06. He was 7th. He went to USA's in 05. He made the semis at USA's in 05. So for over a decade, he was competing at US championships. So what more can you do? And you had a few opportunities and they didn't go perfectly, but got a lot out of himself.
Yeah.
With the marathon, everybody's
just...
one last point. With the marathon, everybody's comparing themselves to Meb or to Linden, right? And in the men's 800, maybe people are comparing themselves to KD, and they think everybody's going to be Kadivas Robinson and have this career that lasts forever. But that's not the rule. That's the exception.
Yeah, well, it's just weird for some of these athletes to have this 4 years of, not be harsh, but irrelevance, right? You were one of the best in the U.S. and one of the best in the world for such a long time, and then you have to go through this 4 years of like not even competing, but still being calling yourself a professional athlete. It's like I wish we could have had like this like celebration of Duane Solomon's career at the end of 2017 when we're like, all right, it's the writing's on the wall, but we have to wait till a pandemic in 2020 for us to recap how great of an athlete he was,
Yeah.
Because normally, I mean, in other sports, like Kobe Bryant, like people are recapping they're not waiting 4 years after he's retired or 4 years after not playing in a single basketball game to talk about his career. They're talking about it during his final season,
Yeah. Yeah. And what is he now? He's 30. Duane Solomon's 35, 35. I just looked this up. KD retired, and his last race was in 2012 at the Olympics, and he was 36. So he retired at about the same time, but he retired right after an Olympic appearance, and that was it for him. But I don't know. Like, I don't blame anybody for just hanging around and they always think they can get it back. I remember having conversation with Jeremy Warner in the mix zone, and I was like, and this was after, this was probably at a US indoors in 2010, 2011, something like that. Hey, do you think you still get back that form? Yeah, you can. That's what he kept saying. Like, yeah, I can still get it back. I can still get it back. Like, my training's coming around. And I asked Otto Bolden, sprint analyst, about this. I said, what is it? He's like, every single athlete will tell you that. Literally every single one will tell you they're about to turn a corner, because you don't get to that point without believing in yourself to that level. Even when all evidence points to the contrary, you just talk yourself into it. So I bet even last year, 2 years ago, you're thinking, okay, a couple things turn around, I can get it back. I mean, if you're always that great at something, I think you always think I can recapture it. And I'm immune a bit to old age.
And I also think we are on the sidelines trying to be like the media and be like, nah, we don't know what they're actually going through. Meanwhile, someone like Abdi Abdurrahman is like, yeah, I told you, I'll get it back.
Yeah.
and I'll
Yeah,
make another
yeah,
team, or someone like Bernard Lagat be like, yeah, I told you I'll make the 2016 5K. And I
yeah.
not only I'll make the final and finish in the top 8, so
Well,
these
I mean,
athletes
think about.
are great. So like they have that mentality, so
Well, they make you look like a fool on both ends because yeah, I didn't
yeah.
know what we were saying. There's no way Abdi can make it, right? And then he goes and makes the Olympic team somehow, which is still just a weird statement to say. But then on the other hand, I remember going into 2017 and thinking, okay, Nick Simmons, I'm not going to count out Nick Simmons. I'm just not going to. He's done it too many times before. I know he pulled out of the trials, but I'm not going to count him out, even though he had like one race. He had one
He had
race
like
before.
155 or something like that.
Yeah,
153.
149 here in 149
Oh,
in
149.
Portland before USA's. And you could probably go back on the tape. I probably said it into some microphone where I'm like, not count him out. Nope. Done this too many times. He's going to go from 149 to 145 in a couple weeks. And like all indications were pointed to the contrary. But I mean, that's just human nature. You think something's going to happen until, it doesn't. And vice versa. We've seen Abdi's had bad races over the last couple of years. So you're just like, okay, well, that's who he is now. And then boom, pops up and drops another one. But with
Yeah, and
Solomon, it's like,
yeah. He probably is
no, I was just
ending
saying,
like 2016, like, hey, I could have made the Olympics in 2016 if not for the
right.
fluke. Like he probably of all people knows like he was ready to make that team. And then he has a couple injuries, so he's probably thinking, all right, I'm gonna go to 2020. And now that 2020 got pushed back another year, he's realizing, all right, yeah, that's the writing on the wall. Which
Yeah.
makes more sense.
I think if you told him at the beginning of his career, before he even ran in college, hey, you're going to almost break the American record. You're going to get fourth in the Olympics. You're going to win national titles. I think you'd take that career. I think it just was made. It was complicated by the fact that you had the most consistent men's 800-meter runner probably ever in Nick Simmons with you, and you had David Rudisha, the best 800-meter runner of all time, at the same time you were competing. And call it bad luck if you want, or maybe those guys helped. Solomon doesn't run as fast as he does without Rudisha in that race, and maybe he even could have pulled him to a world record if things were slightly, or not a world record, an American record if things were slightly different. But yeah, you got it. You compete in the area you're in for better for worse.
I guess I want more retirements to happen at USA Championships. Like you go
Yeah,
in and you get knocked down in the first round or in the second round or in the final, and then the mix on you're like, I'm done.
yeah.
And then you have like
Well,
that moment, like where, as opposed to like it being retiring via like in the random time in a random season. You see it a lot. Like,
yeah,
oh, did you hear this person retired? Like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, I didn't.
yeah,
You kind of want to give them that platform of being the way you have your last basketball game, right? And there's a whole
yeah.
press to kind of congratulate you on your last basketball game. You kind of want that. This was your last race. Congrats.
Wasn't Sonia Richards-Ross retired at the 16 trials, right? She pulled up, she got hurt in that race, and then everyone gave her a standing ovation, and then that was it. I'm remembering that
Yeah,
correctly.
probably. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the exact thing that you're talking about. She went out, she tried to give it one last shot. It was the second biggest stage in the sport right after the Olympics, and she couldn't do it. She had her moment, and then got to like have the stage that she deserved, right? And I think did Warner. I think it was the same. If I'm remembering this right, these things happened fairly close together um, at those 16 trials. So no, he ran in 17. Wow, what am I remembering then? Because he DNF'd the second round, but then he kept running. So
This
he
is
made
what
the
they need
second
to
round. Then
do. This is
he
what
ran
they
a
need to
200 in
do.
2017. Yeah.
They need to have like a secret code that they don't tell anyone. Just it's between USATF and elite athletes. There should be like a a qualifier where you had such a great career that your retirement is important, right? Someone like Leo Manzano's retirement is important. Sean Richards
Yeah.
Ross retirement's important. Nick Simmons' retirement is important. These people who were great for a long time and weren't just a flash in the pan, right? And you
Yeah.
tell USATF decides every year whose retirements are important, and they invite them to the USA Championships to compete in the first round of whatever their event is, so they can have a final race and they come into the mix zone, and then they're like, "Yeah, I'm retired." And you don't need to announce it. Like you can be like, "Yeah, we accepted Leo Manzano's 401 mile.
Mhm.
He's in." They're gonna say why. They're just like, because we decided, deal with it. And then he comes in, he runs a race, he doesn't win, whatever, and then he comes in, he's like, "Yeah, I'm retired." And it gives all these athletes, these premier athletes, a way to celebrate them in the final race. It's one last time putting on the kit, one last time lacing up, one last time going through
Mhm.
the mix zone. I mean, because sometimes it works out where like you can make the trials and you're able to time it well, but a lot of times these athletes, like Duane Solomon, never got to have that, right? He never got to,
Right.
run a 150, get in. Like Nick Simmons did it. Nick Simmons qualified without getting the time because he was a world medalist from
Mhm.
2013. He did a whole thing about that's how he was able to get into the meet. But we should find ways to get more of these career celebrated athletes into this meet that doesn't affect the rest of the field. Like we also don't want to screw up the lane assignments for this either. You have to find ways to make sure
Mhm.
celebrating, the 35-year-old doesn't screw up the 25-year-old's chance at making a team. Make sure we do that. But I think there's a way to do this more often, right? I like didn't they like
You've had
accidentally? Yeah.
I was gonna say you've had a lot of bad ideas in the history of this podcast, and it's only a couple months old. So I feel obligated when you have a good idea to recognize it. And this is a legitimate good idea. This is a good idea.
Yeah.
Give closure. Give closure. I like it.
It's just and just like, hey, you get to run. I don't know. I think it'd
Yeah.
be cool.
Yeah. And I'm
Like
not.
who do we want to let's already start giving out who are our retirement slots we're giving to the 2021 Olympics people.
Yeah. Who gets the secret code that they push, and then
Yeah.
it
Retirement.
activates
And
the.
once you click it, you can't come back. So it's like you only get one time entering the code, and then you're never allowed to. You can't do
What's the standard?
provide
Do you
unless you
have to
make a
just be a?
team.
Do you have to
The
be just a
standard
past
is
U.S.
you
champion,
have to be
or
a
is there like
legend.
a committee?
No,
Okay, a legend.
you'd have to have made maybe at least two teams, world or
Uh,
Olympic. I don't know. What's the standard
okay.
of deserving? I mean, I
Well,
mean,
I'm thinking about someone like
maybe
Chris
it's a,
Selinsky, right? Chris Selinsky never made an Olympic team. Now he
yeah, that's a good
made it
point.
but he made '09 and he made 11. I guess you could also say that American record people get. I think there should be a committee. I like committees
Yeah, they
because I
could be
want to be
committee,
on
and
them.
they should just know. You just know. You just know
Yeah.
that Chris Zelinsky will. People are going to want to celebrate his retirement, but they're not going to
Hmm.
want to celebrate.
Careful.
I don't know.
Careful. Somebody else's
Like, so,
retirement. Just
yeah,
don't
or
say it.
like just
Just
someone
don't say it.
who randomly got third in a 10K one time and got to go and ends up
Well,
getting
they can
23rd at
retire too.
Worlds.
And they
Yeah,
can retire and they can announce their retirement in the mix zone too. Nobody is prevented from doing that.
yeah,
You're just saying if you want to get the special accommodations of, oh, I haven't run in a year. I want to go back and I want to say farewell to track and field.
yeah. And they
Yeah.
try to do it. Like they try to do it with Leo, but like he wasn't in the race. Hell, he gets to hand out the medal for the 1500-meter champion, and
Oh, that's right. I remember this now. Yeah,
we're
yeah.
gonna applaud him on the loudspeaker. But that's not the same. Like it's
Yeah.
not. Like let Leo just run in the first round. He's not gonna. I mean, what if he's not gonna just put him on the track and let him run?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
yeah, that's what I think.
I'm less concerned with you with the, oh, how does this screw up the 25-year-old? The 25-year-old can figure it out. Is one extra
Yeah.
person in the race. They'll figure out how to do it. Do you remember Webb's last race?
No. Well, wasn't he like entered in the 5K at the trials
Well,
randomly one time?
well, yes,
There was
but they
controversy on
were
that.
2014, remember?
Okay.
He was entered in Milrose. And
Yes.
it was,
Yeah.
can he break 4 one last time? And ended up running 4:06, and that was it. But you knew that was his last race. There was fanfare around that. Now that year, 2014, is tough because, and in the winter of 2014, you got to either you have to keep training and get all the way to the summer and do it at USA's, but that's a low profile USA's. So you want to wait till 2015 to do it? Do you want to wait till the Olympic trials?
No, it's not.
You're asking
No,
a lot there.
USA's is USA's. You can do it in 2014, or he should have just done it in 2013, right? You should have just what was he good in 2013?
Well, that was I mean, he didn't make a team in 2013. Did he run USA's? He didn't run USA's in 2013. He ran pre.
That's good.
Yeah, it could have been that year. I kind of like the Milrose send off though, because there was symmetry there to his career because of what he did in high school. But not everybody's Alan Webb. But I think this is we'll put this in the good idea pile for Gordon.
Ooh. It's not a pile. It's just one. It's a person. It's become a pile to there's two. So it's just a good idea paperweight.
It's a single piece of paper sitting next to a huge stack of papers of all your bad ideas. We'll leave it there.
I just want to be on the committee that decides. That's what I want to be.
Yeah.
I want to be on the committee that decides.
I think
email us who you think should be on the committee.
Yes. Or who should get to punch the code next year. I think your standard is like, you know. And if you have to debate it, then it's probably not. There's probably not anybody. Yeah. All right. We'll leave it there. FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher, or on our website, FloTrack.org/FloTrackPodcast. We have a guest tomorrow. Be sure to tune in for that one. Thank you to Gordon. Thank you to Alon for producing. Talk to you guys next time.